Welcome to this LaRouchePAC podcast. Today is December 12th, and I'm Susan Kokinda, and I'm very honored today to be joined by Michigan State Representative Jim DeSana. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks for having me.
Representative DeSana is a Republican. He's a member of Michigan's small but very courageous Freedom Caucus. He represents the 29th House District in Michigan, which is an area south of Detroit, which is really characterized by working people, blue-collar workers, farmers, families really struggling to make ends meet. And besides being a swing state, Michigan, I think, is also a microcosm of some of the political and economic battles that are being fought out in the nation. So, Representative DeSana, I'd like to start with our Attorney General. Actually, I think we'll call this podcast Police States and Green Mandates. So let's start with the police state side of it.
Sounds good.
And, we'll start with Dana Nessel. Now, you and some other members of the Freedom Caucus have filed articles of impeachment against Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel. And I think the first of those two articles have enormous implications for the legal assaults against President Trump as well. So tell us about the first count.
The first count relates to the Muskegon voter fraud. The applications for voter registrations, they are applications. I believe it was like somewhere in excess of 8,000 on the first go around, and then a couple thousand more turned in. They did a spot check of those and found right away of the 100 that were spot checked, 40 were found to be fraudulent. Vacant addresses, people who didn't live there, names that did not exist, all kinds of things that would be red flags for voter applications. The Muskegon clerks and the clerks around the state asked the Secretary of State, what should we do with these massive amounts of voter registration applications? And her direction was, you better put them on the rolls. In other words, they could get in trouble if they didn't put them on the rolls. So very concerning to us as people who are really concerned about the integrity of our QVF, that people would be added without some type of evidence that this is a real person and a real address. And then when you see somebody do it fraudulently, most of you are aware the company was Gary Bell Strategies, GBI, and there was a particular person working for GBI that submitted these applications. And we also have found out that they were active throughout the entire rest of the state, in the Detroit area, up in northern Michigan, in western Michigan. So we don't even know the extent of, there are other clerks reporting that they got big, huge boxes of voter registration applications. And our Attorney General has chosen to do absolutely nothing about it. She's passed the buck, said that she turned it over to the FBI, said that the Michigan State Police had information on it. And I just feel like if this was something that was done by any type of conservative group, not only would they be investigated, but they'd probably be in court right now trying to defend themselves, and rightly so if you did something that fraudulent. And where is our government? Where's our Justice Department trying to keep our voter files with any integrity at all? So I think that is a huge fall down and a breaking of her oath of office, because she took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Michigan. And I feel like she's just completely fallen down intentionally and willfully.
And I understand that despite the fact that they had this evidence 10 days before the election, there was no guidance to other clerks to be on the lookout for these fraudulent registrations. And also the fact that the office that was housing this GBI operation, I believe it also had semi-automatic weapons at it or something to that effect.
Silencers, guns with silencers on it. And there have been people who have reported on that and have reported that the guns were in fact illegal, even though they had come back with some type of opinion that they were legal guns. But our friends of ours in law enforcement have said most definitely they were not legal. So there were no charges there. These were, all of these applications were being put in by this company. Gary Bell, I believe, is out of Kentucky or Tennessee. And it's just, everybody says, well, the investigation has been dropped or the investigation has ended. The case has been concluded. So I said, well, if the case is concluded, then our attorney general has definitely broken her oath to follow through on violations of the law. These are felonies. When you put a fraudulent voter registration application, it's not a misdemeanor.
Well, I think that really also underscores the second impeachment count, because here you had our attorney general, who was part, I should add for our national viewers, part of a Democratic administration, top to bottom, Governor Whitmer, the Secretary of State, and the Attorney General Dana Nessel. But then Attorney General Nessel turned around and indicted our electors, claiming that when they filed their electoral statements in 2020, or I guess it was 2021 after the election, they knew there was no vote fraud. And yet here she had evidence of vote fraud. So that's your second count. Am I correct?
Correct. And that was in December. It was in 2020. They had to hit a date. There is a date at which alternate slates of electors have to present themselves. Potentially, if they missed that date, if they would have missed that date, our Constitution would have spoken very, very clearly and said, you missed the date to present yourself as an alternate slate of electors. And let's go back to that point. We had no idea at that point whether there was voter fraud, why the vote changed so late in the evening at 3 a.m. What was the basis? We were trying to get to the bottom of that. We were trying, remember now, this is when we were having our state legislature try to go in and figure out what happened. Why did the ballots show up in Detroit in two different vehicles? And initially they denied that. And then now all the video evidence has proven that those ballots did show up at 3 a.m. and people were denying that it happened. They can't refute it now, it's on video. And so at that point in time, they didn't know. They didn't know if there would be, that it would rule that our state election could not be certified due to a suspicion of massive fraud. And so these electors did what their duty was to say, all right, we're going to present ourselves as an alternate slate of electors, and Congress and the presider, our vice president, would decide whether to accept the alternate slate of electors. And they've got the constitutional authority to set the election aside and say the election was fraudulent. The election, we can't even trust the results. We're going to accept these electors. So to say that the electors did something illegal, and if you study our history of our country, this has been done several times before, many, many times actually. And it was not illegal. It's not illegal to do. I think some people get hung up on the fact that they said they were in the Capitol. I believe it says they were at the Capitol. I'm sorry, they were in Lansing, the capital of Michigan. Yes, they were not actually in the state Capitol building, but they presented themselves in our state capitol, in Lansing, as the 16 Republican electors. And Dana Nessel is just going after him for political reasons. We know this. And her statements even say this. Her public statements, she said she felt they were brainwashed. She said it was crazy that these people actually think that Trump won the election. So if you state that you think the electors actually think that Trump won, then intent is gone. The intent to defraud, and the intent to try to go around what they actually believed who won the election is not valid, because she said, oh, they were brainwashed. These people, she said, the problem is these people actually think Trump won the election. And then she said, these people have no chance, or have a very tough trial ahead, because they're being tried in a very Democratic leaning county. So there goes to prejudice. And to me, if our court system wasn't so corrupted, a court would throw all of these counts out pretty quickly. But we're in Ingham County in this case, and I think we're all thinking, okay, we're going to get an initial conviction and then be overturned on appeal. I think that's what we're all expecting. But in the meantime, these people are going to be financially very strapped, $100,000 plus for each person's defense. So $1.6 million to defend what Dana Nessel knows is a very nefarious prosecution of law-abiding citizens. But this is our government now. This is our Justice Department has been weaponized against one group, conservatives.
And apparently this is spreading because, as I understand it, the same thing just happened in Nevada last week, where the electors there were also indicted on similar charges. So, but I think it's extremely important that you and your fellow Freedom Caucus members are fighting back with these actual impeachment charges against Dana Nessel, not just sitting there and saying, you know, you're weaponizing the government, you're doing something about it. Now, let me ask you, our legislature right now is split 50-50 Democrat-Republican because 2 Democrats just resigned to take positions as mayors in local communities. What will be, is there a next step? What can happen next with your impeachment resolutions?
So there's a lot of intricacies to this question. We are tied 54-54. One would think that the impeachment resolution alone would prevent a power sharing agreement, because if we get a power sharing agreement, we would have the gavel and we could force a roll call vote on the impeachment, the articles of impeachment. And I think there's some people that don't want to have to put their name down on that. However, I still think a power sharing agreement is being talked about and being considered. If by chance we win one of the elections in Westland, let's say, and we're 55-55, we're at an impasse there. If we by chance were able to recall one of the Democratic state reps, I think there's about 10 Democrat state reps that should be recalled from office. There's some active petition gathering right now. It's very challenging because the petition numbers are high. But if by chance one of their Democrat reps were recalled or had to leave office for some reason, if we gained a 1-seat majority, we could immediately have a vote on articles of impeachment. Now, that would mean that the trial would go to the Senate, and then they could dismiss it and choose not to take it up. But that would be their choice, and that would be at their own peril. And I believe that the people in their districts could say, why were you not even willing to investigate the fraud that Dana Nessel has committed and the breaking of her oath of office? So there's the path. The Senate would take up the trial and take up evidence and have testimony and hear testimony from potentially these township clerks, these city clerks, potentially from people that were even within their own department, even within the Justice Department. There have been some whistleblowers, potentially somebody even at this assisted living center who has a whistleblower. So if you look at really what's going on, anybody who would speak up, the negative attention and negative consequences that they're trying to push onto people that speak up and try to look for how we can keep people from doing this. People are not going to do this. They're going to say, well, you know, don't even look what happened to these guys. They fought, and the justice system really came out against them. And I think that there was a lot of fear. People were fearful about my fellow reps. There were fellow reps that were fearful about taking on Dana Nessel. And look at the electors. I mean, they say, look at what she's doing to the electors. And, you know, she says that she's got they're concluding on the Lee Chatfield case. We'll see. We will see what she comes out with on Lee Chatfield. But we have a real challenge on our hands with our past history of corruption within our own party and trying to shed that. And the 8 of us who are really trying hard to send the message out there that there are some definite past instances that have to be brought to light, and so that everybody knows that, some people just don't know. They're like, I never knew that my rep wouldn't sign that. I would have thought he would have, of course, tried to bring these things to light, bring the truth to light. Like, no, there's a lot of people that don't want to bring the truth out. And as you know, in our conversations, when the truth comes out, it can be very damaging to both sides. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's good when the people who have been operating corruptly and cooperating with the corrupt people on the other side, we also need to let everybody know, listen, this wasn't done just by one party. These were two parties getting together and deciding to do things. Look at the election integrity. Our legislature punted. They didn't even want to deal with it. And so as a result, it put all of us at jeopardy because now we're election deniers. And I'm like, no, we just wanted to find out what the heck happened. And our legislature had the power to do that, and they didn't. And I'd like to think that if I wasn't in the state legislature at that time, but I'd like to think I would be hollering to the highest heavens that this is wrong. We need to get a forensic audit. We need to count paper ballots. We need to find out why are these precincts not balancing. Patrick Colbeck has done a fantastic job of bringing all the irregularities and anomalies to light, and yet we've just swept it all under the rug and said we're moving on.
Well, I think what you said in terms of by actually waging the fight, you're going to get out into the open, not just the facts of not just the evidence, but also the fact that we do have a uniparty. People will, if you don't fight, people, number one, are not going to see the evidence. And number two, they're not going to see who capitulates.
That's right.
But when you fight, it's going to become much, much clearer. And clearly, as I say, the national implications of this, because this is the same thing we've seen around Donald Trump's courageous fight. He's not given up. And the more he fights, the more comes out into the open. And the more obvious it is just what kind of Leviathan we are actually up against and has to be defeated. So I think what you and your colleagues are doing is extremely, extremely important. As I say, it also has national implications because the argument, which is thrown against President Trump as well, well, you knew there was no fraud, so therefore what you did is illegal, is just completely bogus. And the case here in Michigan, I think, is going to put very stark relief on that.